Jamal thought he was in for another ordinary day at the pool. But when a group of white girls starts bullying him, things take a sudden turn. Humiliated by their racist taunts, Jamal decides to stand up for himself in a way no one expected. When he takes his top off, revealing a body that leaves the girls speechless, the power dynamic shifts. But what happens next leaves the whole pool in shock and has everyone talking for the rest of the summer. Before we dive into this incredible story, comment below where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe if you enjoy the story. Now let's get started. The summer sun hung high in the sky, casting a shimmering heat across the local pool. It was a hub of laughter, splashes, and the sound of children enjoying the long-awaited freedom from school. Jamal, however, found himself isolated on a bench near the shallow end, his body dwarfed by the vibrant chaos around him. As families frolicked in the water, he felt like an outsider looking in, watching life unfold without him. Jamal wasn't new to being the center of attention, but today was different. A group of girls, white and loud, had spotted him sitting alone. Initially, they whispered and giggled amongst themselves, their eyes darting in his direction. But soon the giggles morphed into something far more sinister. The leader of the group, a blonde girl named Tiffany, strutted over with her two friends, Jessica and Ashley, in tow. They were the kind of girls who always seemed to get their way. The kind of girls who turned heads without even trying. "Hey, Jamal," Tiffany called, her voice dripping with sarcasm as she approached him. "Why are you sitting all alone? Don't you want to swim?" Jamal glanced up at them, feeling the heat of their gazes like an unwelcome spotlight. He knew better than to engage with girls like them. The last time he tried to speak up, it had only made things worse. "Yeah, why aren't you swimming?" "Oh wait," Jessica chimed in, smirking. "Maybe he doesn't want to get too dark." The laughter that followed was cruel and piercing. Jamal clenched his fists, anger and embarrassment coursing through him. He had heard it all before, racist jokes, backhanded comments, and jabs at his skin. But that didn't make it any easier to endure. "Come on, take your shirt off and join us," Tiffany taunted, flipping her hair as she leaned in closer. "Or are you hiding something under there?" Jamal's heart raced. He had always been self-conscious about his body. He wasn't ashamed of it. In fact, he worked hard to stay fit. But the thought of taking off his shirt in front of these girls filled him with dread. He knew they weren't really inviting him to join them. They just wanted to humiliate him. "What's the matter? Too shy?" Tiffany teased again, her voice a mocking sing-song. In that moment, Jamal felt a surge of frustration that he couldn't hold back any longer. He had spent years letting people walk all over him, and today felt like a breaking point. "Why don't you just leave me alone?" he finally replied, his voice steady despite the storm brewing inside. Tiffany's expression shifted slightly, but she quickly masked it with her usual bravado. "Aw, did we hurt your feelings? We're just trying to have some fun." The crowd around them was starting to take notice. Other kids began to pause and watch the unfolding scene. Their expressions a mix of curiosity and judgment. Jamal felt exposed, the weight of their stares pressing down on him. The summer sun hung high in the sky, casting a shimmering heat across the local pool. It was a hub of laughter, splashes, and the sound of children enjoying the long-awaited freedom from school. Jamal, however, found himself isolated on a bench near the shallow end, his body dwarfed by the vibrant chaos around him. As families frolicked in the water, he felt like an outsider looking in, watching life unfold without him. Jamal wasn't new to being the center of attention, but today was different. A group of girls, white and loud, had spotted him sitting alone. Initially, they whispered and giggled amongst themselves, their eyes darting in his direction. But soon, the giggles morphed into something far more sinister. The leader of the group, a blonde girl named Tiffany, strutted over with her two friends, Jessica and Ashley, in tow. They were the kind of girls who always seemed to get their way, the kind of girls who turned heads without even trying. "Hey, Jamal," Tiffany called, her voice dripping with sarcasm as she approached him. "Why are you sitting all alone? Don't you want to swim?" Jamal glanced up at them, feeling the heat of their gazes like an unwelcome spotlight. He knew better than to engage with girls like them. The last time he'd tried to speak up, it had only made things worse. "Yeah, why aren't you swimming?" "Oh wait," Jessica chimed in, smirking. Maybe he doesn't want to get too dark. The laughter that followed was cruel and piercing. Jamal clenched his fists, anger and embarrassment coursing through him. He had heard it all before. Racist jokes, backhanded comments, and jabs at his skin. But that didn't make it any easier to endure. "Come on, take your shirt off and join us," Tiffany taunted, flipping her hair as she leaned in closer. "Or are you hiding something under there?" Jamal's heart raced. He had always been self-conscious about his body. He wasn't ashamed of it. In fact, he worked hard to stay fit. But the thought of taking off his shirt in front of these girls filled him with dread. He knew they weren't really inviting him to join them. They just wanted to humiliate him. "What's the matter? Too shy?" Tiffany teased again, her voice a mocking sing-song. In that moment, Jamal felt a surge of frustration that he couldn't hold back any longer. He had spent years letting people walk all over him, and today felt like a breaking point. "Why don't you just leave me alone?" he finally replied, his voice steady despite the storm brewing inside. Tiffany's expression shifted slightly, but she quickly masked it with her usual bravado. "Ah, did we hurt your feelings? We're just trying to have some fun." The crowd around them was starting to take notice. Other kids began to pause and watch the unfolding scene, their expressions a mix of curiosity and judgment. Jamal felt exposed, the weight of their stares pressing down on him. He knew he could walk away, but something in him held firm. It wasn't just about the humiliation. It was about standing up for himself in a world that had often told him he didn't belong. The laughter from Tiffany and her friends echoed around the pool. But Jamal could feel something in the air shift. The other kids were watching, some amused, some sympathetic. He could see a few boys whispering and pointing, their eyes darting back to him. It was a strange mix of emotions, the fear of ridicule and the desire to prove he was more than what they saw. Tiffany, sensing the attention, leaned in closer, her voice lowering. "Come on, Jamal. Don't be such a wuss, just take off your shirt. I mean, what are you scared of?" At that moment, Jamal made a decision that would change everything. Tired of hiding, tired of being the punchline to their jokes, he stood up slowly, his tall frame casting a long shadow over Tiffany and her friends. The crowd began to murmur, their interest piqued. Without a word, he reached for the hem of his shirt and pulled it over his head, revealing the hard-earned muscles beneath. His chest was defined, his arms strong and toned from years of dedication at the gym. The laughter around the pool faded into stunned silence as the kids absorbed the sight of him, their expressions shifting from mockery to awe. For a moment, the only sound was the soft splashing of water, as if the pool itself was holding its breath. Jamal had never felt more powerful, standing there with the sun illuminating his body. He had been bullied, teased, and made to feel small for so long. But now, in this moment, he was not just a target, he was a force to be reckoned with. Tiffany's confidence wavered as she stared at him, her mouth slightly agape. The transformation was palpable. The girls who had once giggled and pointed were now speechless, their eyes wide. "Wow," one of them whispered, unable to contain her surprise. Jamal felt a surge of adrenaline coursing through him. This was his moment. He wasn't going to let their previous comments fine him. "You think this changes anything?" he said, his voice calm but firm. "You think just because I look different now you're going to treat me better? I'm not here for your approval." The words hung in the air. And for the first time, the roles were reversed. Tiffany and her friends exchanged glances, their bravado slipping away. They had underestimated him, and now they were left grappling with the reality of their actions. The pool area buzzed with energy as whispers spread like wildfire. "Did you see his body? Whoa, he's strong. Why were they picking on him?" But Tiffany, unwilling to accept defeat, snapped back. "Whatever. You think you're so special? Just because you've got muscles doesn't mean anything." As if to regain control, she gestured toward her friends. "Come on, let's just go swim. He's not worth it." Jamal felt a wave of triumph wash over him. The power had shifted, and it felt exhilarating. As Tiffany turned to walk away, her bravado crumbling, Jamal watched as more kids began to gather around him, clearly impressed. He had always been quiet and reserved, the kid who didn't stand out. But in this moment, Jamal felt a shift, a realization that he could redefine how others saw him. He wasn't just the kid who was bullied, He was a young man who had the strength to stand tall, even when the odds were stacked against him. As Tiffany and her friends retreated, Jamal felt a mixture of relief and exhilaration. The laughter of his peers filled the air, a refreshing sound compared to the jeers and taunts he was accustomed to. He soaked in their admiration, feeling more confident than ever before. It was as if he had shed not just his shirt, but also the weight of their ridicule. But Tiffany wasn't going to let the humiliation slide that easily. Her face was flushed with anger, and she turned back, eyes narrowed. "You're just a loser trying to show off. You think people actually like you?" In that moment, the crowd around them seemed to take a collective breath, waiting for Jamal's response. He could feel the energy shift as kids leaned in closer, eager to witness how he would handle this. "Yeah, I think they do," Jamal replied coolly, surprising even himself with his calmness. "And honestly, I don't care what you think." Tiffany's bravado faltered again, and in a desperate attempt to save face, she stepped back, ready to storm off. But in her haste, she miscalculated. As she turned on her heel, she slipped on the wet tile beside the pool, arms flailing as she fought for balance. The world seemed to slow down as Tiffany lost her footing and tumbled straight into the pool with a dramatic splash. Gasps erupted from the onlookers, and for a moment, time stood still. Then, a wave of laughter followed as Tiffany resurfaced, sputtering and wide-eyed, her confidence washed away along with her perfectly styled hair. Her friends, caught off guard, rushed to help, but in their panic, they too lost their balance and fell into the water beside her. The sight of 3 girls flailing in the pool was nothing short of comical, and laughter erupted from every corner of the pool area. "Maybe you should stick to swimming lessons," one boy shouted, and the crowd roared with laughter. Jamal couldn't help but join in, the sound of their mirth echoing in his ears, drowning out the echoes of past hurt. Tiffany's face turned red with embarrassment, and as she struggled to swim toward the edge, the laughter only grew louder. The once boastful girl was now the subject of ridicule, her attempts to regain her composure futile against the backdrop of amusement. Jamal stood at the pool's edge, feeling an unexpected rush of joy. The humiliation that had been thrown at him for years was now reflected back at Tiffany. It was a poetic justice, and he savored every moment. The girl who had made him feel less than was now the one drowning in her own embarrassment. As they finally clambered out of the pool, water dripping from their clothes, Tiffany shot Jamal a glare that promised revenge. But the camaraderie that had formed among the other kids around him was palpable. They weren't just laughing at Tiffany anymore, they were celebrating Jamal's triumph over the girls who had tried to belittle him. "Nice one, man," someone called out, slapping Jamal on the back. "You showed them." With each cheer, Jamal felt a sense of belonging wash over him. This was more than just a moment of revenge, it was a turning point. He had stood up for himself, and in doing so, gained the respect of his peers. He realized then that it wasn't about the muscles or the bravado. It was about confidence, the belief that he was worthy of respect. And as he looked around at the smiling faces, he knew he had finally found his place among them. As the laughter from the pool settled into a joyful buzz, Jamal felt an unexpected sense of camaraderie enveloping him. Kids who had once ignored him were now eager to chat, their smiles genuine. The embarrassing incident with Tiffany and her friends had brought everyone together, turning the atmosphere from one of isolation to celebration. "Hey man, I'm Jake," one boy introduced himself, extending his hand. "That was awesome. I've seen them pick on you before, and I always wanted to say something, but you know how it is." Jamal nodded, understanding all too well the unspoken rules of social dynamics. "Yeah, I get it. I just got tired of it." The conversation flowed easily, and soon he found himself surrounded by a small group of kids eager to hear more about his interests. They chatted about sports, music, and summer plans, their words punctuated by laughter and shared stories. For the first time in a long while, Jamal felt he was part of something bigger than himself. But amidst the newfound acceptance, Jamal kept a watchful eye on Tiffany and her friends. They were huddled at the edge of the pool, trying to dry off and regain their composure. Their earlier bravado deflated. He could see the resentment bubbling under their surface as they exchanged whispered comments and pointed glares in his direction. "Look at them," Jessica sneered, her voice barely audible over the laughter. "They think they're so cool now." Jamal heard their whispers but chose to ignore them. He was done letting their negativity affect him. Instead, he focused on the kids who appreciated him for who he was. Someone who had the courage to stand up against bullying, even when it was hard. As the afternoon sun began to dip lower in the sky, the pool area transformed. The golden light cast a warm glow over the scene, making everything feel almost magical. Jamal jumped into the water, joining a group of boys playing a casual game of water polo, their laughter filling the air with an infectious joy. Every splash felt liberating, washing away not only the water, but also the bitterness of his past experiences. He was no longer the shy, bullied kid on the sidelines. He was a valued part of the community, and it felt incredible. After a while, he noticed Tiffany and her friends still lingering by the pool's edge, their earlier confidence shattered. They were quiet now, and Jamal couldn't help but feel a flicker of sympathy. Everyone had their struggles. Perhaps they were dealing with their insecurities too, even if they expressed them through cruelty. "Hey, Jamal," Jake called, breaking him from his thoughts. "You want to show us how you do those push-ups? I heard you're pretty strong." Laughter erupted as the suggestion hung in the air. Jamal hesitated for a moment, glancing at Tiffany's group. But the feeling of unity from the kids surrounding him pushed him forward. He nodded, a grin spreading across his face. "Sure, let's do it." The crowd of kids gathered around as Jamal dropped down to demonstrate his strength. He moved effortlessly, showcasing his muscles as he performed push-up after push-up. The cheers grew louder with each rep, and soon it felt like a celebration of everything he had accomplished, not just in that moment, but in his life. As the laughter and cheers continued, he caught Tiffany's eye. She was watching him closely, her earlier anger now replaced with a grudging respect. It was a small victory, but it felt monumental. All right. We get it, you're strong," she finally called out, a teasing smile breaking through her facade. "Just don't let it go to your head." Surprised by her unexpected attempt at humor, the kids laughed even harder. Jamal smiled back, realizing that even in their teasing, there was a chance for redemption. The atmosphere shifted. What had started as a day of ridicule transformed into one of understanding and acceptance. Jamal felt a newfound confidence, not just in himself, but in his ability to create change, even in the hearts of those who had once tried to tear him down. As the sun began to set, casting a warm orange glow over the pool area, Jamal felt an overwhelming sense of satisfaction. The earlier tensions seemed to evaporate with the heat of the day, leaving behind a spirit of camaraderie that had blossomed from his moment of courage. The laughter and cheers still echoed around him, but now there was an added warmth, a feeling that they had all experienced something transformative together. Jamal looked around at the faces of the kids who had once overlooked him, now animatedly discussing plans for the rest of the summer, and he realized how much had changed in just a few hours. Tiffany and her friends were still drying off, but the tension that had marked their earlier confrontation was gone. They were sitting together, engaged in animated conversation. Jamal noticed that Tiffany had even joined in the laughter, her previous anger replaced with a lighter, almost playful demeanor. "Hey Jamal," Jake called out again, pulling him from his thoughts. "We're planning to have a pool party next week. You should totally come, it'll be fun." Jamal's heart soared at the invitation. It felt surreal that just hours ago he had been on the outside looking in, and now he was being included in their plans. "Definitely. I'd love to come," he replied, a broad smile spreading across his face. Tiffany glanced over, catching his eye. "Hey Jamal," she said, her tone surprisingly friendly. "You really did show us today. You've got guts, and I respect that. Sorry for being such a jerk earlier." For a moment, Jamal was taken aback. He had half expected Tiffany to remain bitter, but her admission took him by surprise. "Thanks, Tiffany. I appreciate that. It's never easy to admit when you're wrong," he replied, keeping his tone light. As the conversations continued, Jamal felt a wave of relief wash over him. He was no longer just the kid who was bullied. He was part of a community, a group that had finally recognized him for who he was, beyond the color of his skin or the opinions of a few mean girls. As the sun dipped below the horizon, a collective decision was made to call it a day. Kids began to pack their bags, chatting about the fun they had and the new friendships that had formed. Jamal lingered a bit longer, feeling the warmth of the day wrap around him like a comforting blanket. "See you next week, Jamal," the kids called out as they departed, their voices a blend of excitement and newfound camaraderie. He waved goodbye, his heart lighter than it had been in a long time. The experience had reshaped not just how he felt about himself, but also how he saw the potential for change in others. As he walked away from the pool, Jamal felt the weight of the past lift off his shoulders. He wasn't just the kid who had been bullied. He was a young man ready to embrace new opportunities and friendships. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but today had shown him that standing up for himself could lead to incredible things. The summer stretched out before him, filled with potential and promise, and for the first time in a long while, Jamal felt he could face whatever challenges lay ahead. He was ready to make his mark, not just at the pool, but in the world beyond. If you enjoyed this story, please consider subscribing to my YouTube channel. I put a lot of love and care into telling these important stories, and your support means the world to me. Thank you again, and I'll see you next time. Have a blessed day.